On August 14th, I warned that attackers were starting to use the vulnerability on Exchange servers that OrangeSci disclosed at both Pwn2Own and DEF CON earlier this year. Since then, it appears that this vulnerability has been picked up by attackers and they are starting to unleash a wave of attacks on vulnerable versions of Exchange. We're going to dive into what we've learned and then also talk about what attackers can do with this exploit once they have run it. And then finally, we're going to finish up with what you can do to mitigate your risk to this vulnerability. We're going to talk about all of that starting right now. Real quick before we get started, we really want to try to raise awareness on this issue because there's probably a lot of people and organizations that are running vulnerable versions of Exchange that are vulnerable to ProxyShell. And so I need your help to spread awareness on this issue. If you can share this video with at least 1 or 2 people that need to know about ProxyShell and how to protect their organization from ProxyShell, please do so. And then that way we can get word out and hopefully start taking steps industry-wide to start mitigating the risk of this vulnerability. Let's dive right back in. For a background on what ProxyShell is, check out this video. We already talked about it, so I'm going to kind of go through this video with the expectation that you've already seen it. If you haven't, pause this video. There's a link down in the description. Go ahead and check it out and then come back to this video because this includes really important updates on that. According to this article, and there's a link down in the description, ProxyShell comprises 3 different vulnerabilities. The CVEs themselves are actually listed in the document, but these 3 exploits form a 3-step exploit chain. The first exploit creates some pre-authentication path confusion, which allows the attacker to bypass access control lists. The second exploit allows for privilege escalation in PowerShell. And then the third vulnerability leads to post-authentication arbitrary file write, which basically allows the attacker to basically run arbitrary code by writing commands into files arbitrarily. Now, this allows attackers who have already, according to this article, created Nmap scripts to identify vulnerable versions of Exchange, to basically identify these vulnerable versions, or to identify vulnerable Exchange servers, and then basically go from 0 access to full access using the 3 exploit chain. Now, these do not require the attacker to gain passwords for any users prior to launching these exploits. They are no password exploit, but they do eventually allow for privilege escalation and arbitrary code execution. Now, I also mentioned in my last video that Microsoft patched these vulnerabilities back in April. However, it appears that a whole lot of organizations have not adopted this patch for themselves even now in August. And so attackers have seen this and they are starting to go crazy, both enumerating servers that are vulnerable to ProxyShell and to exploit those vulnerabilities. In fact, this issue has become so widespread that CISA went ahead and released a notice regarding this kind of attack. Also, cybersecurity researchers have noticed that attackers are evolving this exploit to reduce the profile of this exploit, so that way they can basically reduce their profile overall, preventing the blue team from being able to detect this attack. Now, this kind of situation is not new to Exchange. In March, we talked about Hafnium and their widespread attack of vulnerable versions of Exchange, which allowed them to infect over 100,000 Exchange servers worldwide, which is an incredible number. But basically what happened was, as Microsoft was preparing a patch for the specific vulnerability they were taking advantage of, they were able to automate the exploit, and that really ballooned the number of Exchange servers that they were attacking. Now, there's no indication that this specific exploit can be automated. Again, it's a 3-stage exploit. It probably requires some level of customization. So automating it would be kind of tough, if not really practical or doable. But nonetheless, this is still an incredibly potent vulnerability, and attackers are becoming incredibly effective at enumerating and exploiting vulnerable Exchange servers. So now that we understand just how massive this problem can potentially be, let's talk about what would attackers do even if they manage to exploit vulnerable versions of Exchange. Well, they're literally able to do remote code execution. They can gain persistence. They can establish persistence and create a backdoor. And then from there, the possibilities are endless. It's been a trend lately among cyber criminals to sell access to hacked devices. And then people that buy access, if it's to a large organization, if it's a ransomware gang that's buying access, it's not uncommon for them to upload ransomware to the infected organization. So if you're watching this video and you're working for an organization of any kind of size and you're aware that you're running vulnerable versions of Exchange, it's incredibly important that you start raising alarms to patch this vulnerability, because this is a ransomware threat. If attackers are able to exploit this and you're not able to detect it, then you could show up to work tomorrow and you could have a ransomware outbreak, and it might be because of this issue. So what can you do to prevent this? Well, it's literally so simple. You just patch. You just upgrade the version of Exchange. Microsoft already gave you tools to succeed here. You just have to do it. Now, there's a lot of reasons why organizations may choose to not patch in specific cases. However, again, it's a risk-benefit analysis here. The benefit here is that you are reducing your risk profile overall, and the benefit, and the other benefit is you're avoiding a ransomware outbreak. Now, the risk is that you're not reducing your risk profile, and that you could potentially get a ransomware outbreak, or worse, the attacker is able to gain and maintain persistence, and they're able to continually exfiltrate data and sell it, or give it to other people that should not have access to this data, and they could manipulate your systems. So absolutely, please make sure that you're patching your systems. Please share this video with everybody that you know that needs to know about this situation, and then also like and comment, because that also helps with the YouTube algorithm, and that also kind of helps spread this video a little bit more. So with that, I hope this was all helpful. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.